Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chris Johnson. Palpable Paradox.
Yeah, I can hear you. Hey. Yeah. What's up, Lee?
I'm chilling. This is my first Zoom phone call ever, so sorry for the
No worries. I'm only on like my 7th or 8th or something like that. I'm learning trial by fire as well. So
I hear you. So I know I talked to you now, and I said I was a fan of what you're doing here. So I'd either get grainy visuals or it'd be too dark and so the hard part for me has been video editing and getting like camera stuff right. And yeah, I feel you with the video stuff. It's like you gotta kind of dedicate to learning it, because you're right, no one's coming to save you, and even YouTube tutorials can be not as easy as they seem.
no. And well, my resolve has been since the beginning, really. Like, I started this podcast with my phone. So I would just put my phone down between me and whoever my guest was, backstage, in a van, bus, didn't care, on a park bench, because I like the idea of being interested in what, like being so like interested in what you're doing, so curious about what it is that you're trying, that you'll just kind of start really humble and really simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also like too, like I found a few other people's podcasts where like I can see, like you can go back to like Rogan, right? You look at the early days of Rogan, all these random split screens, different people in the same, it was hokey at best. And so all that kind of inspired me to go, you know what, just work with what you got. Just do that.
I think, and I might be opening a rabbit hole here with this statement, but I think that with anything, people know honesty and integrity when they see it. And so even if like the beginning of this podcast starts with me figuring out audio, like I think there's something cool about like just the honest approach. I like that there's for the most part, you don't stop and start podcasts. I like the open format of it. And I think people just recognize the honesty about it. You see humans like uncut, whereas the rest of the things you see, whether it's a video on Instagram or whatever, you're seeing the finest polished thing. And so I kind of dig how this is all just honest, and I like the approach. And I think that's important with podcasting. You don't want a bullshit approach.
Same.
or anything about it to be bullshit.
100% agree, man. I think that it's a welcome relief, because like you said, like everything, most of what you see in media is slick and polished, and most advantageous cuts and the most advantageous angles and the perfect lighting, and then they can airbrush it afterwards and all these things. So we're, and as a part of that like we've gotten used to. And hey, I'm a fan of slick. Like I was just listening to your Infinite Mind record again, and I mean, hey, like I'm thankful that you're into slick editing and slick sounds too, because like it comes across in your albums, both your solo and with Boo. And so like it's not like we're not fans of slick quality things, because we like big budget films and stuff too.
Absolutely.
When it comes to getting to know somebody, it's nice to like kind of have a little bit of raw. Don't cut it all out. I want to know who you are,
Absolutely. When, for example, we talk about the editing and stuff on some of our records, like when we were like in high school and doing the first Born Osiris record, like one of our big influences was the band that was on our record label, The Faceless, and it was like about having this machine quality. That was like the attractive part, was the drums sounded fucking perfect, and like everything sounded so perfect. And so that was like what was turning us on at the moment. And so it became a part of what our band was, is to become like this machine sounding, robotic sounding thing. And then it was good intentions, of course, and I still dig it. I don't have an issue with it. But then, the other day, like growing up, I like love System of a Down, for example. It's just one example. And if you listen to like those records, like you hear like a string pop, like you hear all the crazy shit, and it gives it a personality, it gives it an attitude. So many different approaches about polishing music in particular. But it's funny to look back and think about where I came from, where you hear everything, and that gave recordings personality, into now where we're all a lot of bedroom producers just putting out absolutely perfect things. And it's funny, I just finished my second solo record, and this is the first one that I've
Whoa.
done everything, even mixing and mastering. So I'm excited about that.
Whoa.
And this time around, it was actually I was learning to just leave in aspects of what's real. So for example, there's like a couple spots where I'd be like, oh, there's this bend that I really did. But you know, for example, when you bend a note, you can hear like an underlying spring or like a string kind of there.
Yep.
And I'd be like, well, shit, I loved that bend so much in that take, but like you can hear this. And so this time around, I'm like, I'm leaving it. That's the one I like, and it's real. And if you solo it, when you get the stems or whatever, you'll hear that shit. And I think it's personality, and I kind of dig it, even if it's adding this grotesque style. I mean, whatever's ringing underneath is probably not like in the key of whatever's happening, but I just dig it now. And so I'm actually kind of headed back towards the direction of I want things to be perfectly clean, but almost not necessarily performance. I want a clean recording, but like the performances don't need to be perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, good, but not perfect.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. And I dig that so much. I think I dealt with it a lot when I was at EMG TV. What back in the day, like I fly artists in, and you know the whole deal there. We just do playthrough videos, and
Yeah.
I'd see so many badass players want to do a 7th, an 8th, a 9th, a 10th take
I bet.
on something, you know, because it's technical music, and I get it. It's like it's a lot of notes. It's a lot to be responsible for, and
Yeah.
that's the thing that I think that fans and artists alike should, you know, just make friends with, is that like, hey man, you're responsible for a whole lot.
Yeah.
A whole lot. And to keep it together as the main focal point, as a acrobatic you know, wizard guitar player, you know, like, yeah, I get it. You know, do we want the guy the star of the show to pull off the big, you know, finale, the big thing?
Yeah.
We totally do. We're totally
Yeah.
down. But there's something about the human element, because we've all tried and fucked up. We've all tried and grinded at something endlessly, and even in the 100th, you know, time, we're like, oh, I'm not getting it yet, you know, I don't have the thing.
Yeah.
And so to show your little bit of vulnerability is such a it's actually a big turn on for most of us, now that we're kind of like, now that we've sucked the air out of everything, and we've seen what it's like to like have it just be infinitely perfect. You're like, nope.
Yeah.
I'll take the little string thing out, take this little thing out, and it's just, and yeah, that's a form in itself. But ultimately, I think that as we grow and mature as musicians and listeners, that we end up going, oh, I mean, it's not as relatable. Like I can't even do that. Like you know, not even that I, you know, or it just feels like it's good for effect. I think more than anything, it's good to like let people in, you know?
Absolutely. On this note of me doing the mixing and mastering on the thing, it was a process, and along the way, and this is the reason I bring it up, is because it was a learning process along the way. So on our third record, The Discovery, was my first time doing in-studio Born with Osiris work. So that's the one I started editing guitars. And then the next record, I learned a little bit more, because Born, on our first few records, we got to record with very talented producers. And I'm always the guy in the room who's like picking the brain. If you're in a room and you have something that I would hope to learn, I'm going to respectfully bother the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Try to learn from you. And so the process of Born recording our records, I learned more from every producer that we were with. And so each record started Discovery editing guitars. The next one I got to track bass and edit guitars. And the next one I did keys, guitars, and bass, tracked and edited. And then the next one, the simulation that came out last year with Born, I did the whole thing minus vocals. And so this solo record, it's the whole thing mixed, mastered. And so along the way, you have these trial and errors and these lessons that you learn. And so on the note of like perfection, like for example, our first Born record, completely real everything, but we edited the drums and sound replaced the performances to make them sound big. And so people were like, oh, it's programmed, but it wasn't. It was totally real. And so the next record, what happened was we were like, all right, let's go really, really real sounding so we don't have to deal with this again. And then what happened was people were like, the recording isn't very good because it's like too weak or something, you know? And so you kind of learn along the way that it can sound perfect and be real, and then you can almost go the opposite direction and kind of hurt your product, and finding a balance. And sometimes no one's going to be happy either. Truth. And so the first solo thing I ever did was a track called Skylasher, and it wasn't attached to a record or anything. It was just one single song. Excuse me. And that was the first one that I like learned a new technique of editing. And so I learned how to do like basically really tight editing, but you bump the front of the transient at a 64th or whatever just a little bit earlier, because I think a lot of bedroom producers will chop their breakdowns or their notes where they see the kick on the grid. And what they don't realize is like the chunk, the pick attack, the personality, the gent, sometimes comes before that kick happens. So you get this robotic sound, and it can sound cool and tight, but it's not real. And so, for example, I was just learning this new editing trick where you get all the pick attack. However, I would still keep things really robotic the way I grew up with Born. And then so a lot of people were like, oh, it's programmed guitar. And first I was like, what does that even mean?
What does that even mean?
There's a guitar program like that to do that.
No.
I later found out they thought you could like reamp Guitar Pro or something. And actually mixed a band that sent me that to do. And I wasn't stoked. But in the end, I learned what they were thinking I was doing. But no, that was a learning experience along the way of like editing something too perfectly to the point where people think it's not even real. And so then your perfect scheme just collapsed in your face,
Yeah. Then you get a bunch of doubters. Now, so I like that we're talking about, because you're shifting. What you'll do is, if I understand you correctly, is you're recording everything in time to the thing. But if you didn't get that kind of like touch of the string or the breath like right before the start, that you'll shift everything a nano second back, so you get a smidge of that, but everything still basically stays in time.
Exactly. So when you zoom out of like audio, you see the spike. Say it's a snare drum, like crack, right? So to you, audibly, a snare starts with the smack, right? It should look like a spike, and it's what it is. But whether it's a kick drum or a spike, a snare, whatever it is, audio, if you zoom in, you'll always see at the front that there's just this little...
Ooh, the ramp.
It's the ramp up to it, no matter how sharp that hit is. So you want the bulk of the spike of your pick to be on time. But what people will do is they'll cut what's before it off, because it's technically, yes, it is early. But however, that doesn't mean you're hearing it early. It means that it's just really just the natural way that the audio happens. I hope I'm explaining it kind of correctly, but
yeah, I totally follow. And it's kind of timely too, because I'm kind of new to watching the Rick Beato. Do you know Rick Beato?
I'm new to it too, but I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too. Like I'm so impressed with his knowledge and like how clean of videos he produces.
Exactly.
And, like everything about it. I'm like, can you be my dad? Like, because you're awesome, dude. But like, I was just watching one of his videos about 5 things you should know to be a better bass player or something like that. Because I'm doing a little bit of bass on some of my demo tracks and stuff, and I actually really love bass, and I just always felt like I don't know how to be a bass player though, so I'll just leave it to somebody else, and I'll just hold the root notes, and somebody else can replace shit. But last night I was watching that, it was interesting. One of the tips he was like, he had uncovered through the years of producing bands and recording, was that he really liked it when the bass was a little bit behind the kick. And he's like, oh, there's something about when it's just a little behind, it makes it the whole track seem bigger, because it kind of follows, like you hear the attack of the kick, and the bass kind of carries it on in a way that like it I don't know the way he was explaining it, but it made me really kind of evaluate a little bit. I was like, oh, that's, and then he talked about time shifting and how, a good bass player actually should be able to utilize playing on the beat, behind the beat, and in front of the beat when it is called for as an effect, so to speak. Yeah.
So another example of, so like say you're doing a run on a record, a solo thing, and you're doing 3 notes per string, dun, 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 dun. Even in my voice trying to do that, you'll notice that like when you do the 3 notes, they'll be in succession, right? But you can see when you had to do that string skip, you're not saying you're getting off time, but you can almost see that there is just this microscopic lag in the fact that you did change strings. And so that note might come just a little bit slower than your first three because they're on the same string. So the fourth one might be a little behind. And so I know a mistake I used to make was I would go in and be like, oh, I can see that because I was thinking perfect at the time. And I would put it forward and then it wouldn't sound good. It actually sounded fake and kind of crappy. And so, but the beauty of it is that it was actually just a little bit behind and it kind of just felt better. And so I think that's what gives it life. You know, I think if everything is too perfect like that, you can just tell. And you can make guitar that is real sound fake if you do it, you know, kind of in the wrong way. Kind of, I guess, the way I did it, you know, on that first recording I was talking about. But it's all just a crazy learning experience. And I agree. Some of the best runs that I've done, like super naturally, no touched at all. If you zoom in, the notes are a little bit behind, but I don't think you hear it and go, that's behind. You actually just, you look at it and you see it. And that's how you find out that just behind the tiniest bit is actually kind of like, it sounds good.
Well, it actually speaks to, like you kind of said, like it keeps things sounding alive. And like, I think it speaks to like what a real band tends to end up doing anyway, with left to their own devices in a practice room without a click.
Yeah.
You know, like, or even with a click, but like, but old school, like that's why, I mean, you wouldn't, if you clicked out and if you tempo mapped Zeppelin, I don't think you'd be happy about the result. You know, like I just don't think you would, because it's a feeling. It's not an exact shape. It's not an exact science. It's an individual plus another individual plus another individual. Yeah. Or in our case at home, like when we're all doing it ourselves, it's one take versus another human take versus another human take, right? And as you bring those together, and they're slightly out of time with each other, they sound bigger. And there's something that allows them to be larger than if they were all perfect, because the perfect, it's almost, there's an element of squashing it, and then the wideness and the liveliness of it kind of goes away.
There's you know, I'm sure guitar players that watch this will know exactly what I'm talking about, because I don't know the exact effect. I haven't done it myself, but there's some people that'll use a delay so tight of a delay. And it's really just the same thing being such a tad delay that you get exactly that. You get bigger. And so I think that's when you're talking about a band like Zeppelin or whoever, like that's where you get the beauty, because you'll have some people behind the beat and the guy at the front, but then this kind of thing like that makes it exactly what you said, just bigger. And it gives it that sexy, real, it's who they are. It's a personality, it's a stamp. I think it's cool.
I think of Maiden, like you think of three guitars, you know, doing their parts, and they're not perfectly in time. That's like the beauty of it. And I think, like what you just described, actually there was there's a few different pedals out there that are doublers, that are actually meant to go kind of left and right stereo, right? So when you click it on and you want to take your solo, that you have like this wide depth of field, and it sends the one to the left or the right. It's just milliseconds, just lagging behind, right? So it sounds big though. Like Zakk Wylde is really a fan of that sound, because it's a recording technique that a lot of these guys would do it beforehand. They go and they'd cut the solo 2 times, you know, try to be almost pretty exact. And if it was exact, they just shift one. But like, I think that they would just kind of relax on one of them a little bit, and then you get this bigger thing, you know.
It's funny you mentioned, if we looked back on like Zeppelin's, you know, just the tempo maps. You know the band Car Bomb? Are you familiar with them?
Fan. Love them.
Huge fan of myself too. So Greg, I toured with them last summer, and Greg, what he does, he's a guitar player, and he told me he likes to go into those old recordings and tempo map them, because they didn't really, most of these, I'm not going to speak on Zeppelin, for example, but let's say them didn't use a click. They got in a room and recorded it. I don't know their process, but I would guess that. Anyway, so he will go and try to get it to a click, because if you've heard Car Bomb, you know that you can't even tell what's going on. It was me, it was me and Animals as leaders and Car Bomb on tour. And like so me and Tosin and Javier, like, and people look at Tosin and Javier like gods, you know, but it's the three of us staring at Car Bomb like with like a jaw drop, just like what the hell is happening every night side stage, because we were such fans. And I think, you know, it's because they shift in the tempo and they make you feel like you're walking and then someone grabbed your belt and like make you, like, the music feels like this start stop kind of thing. That's cool. And so I'm not sure how he applies it, and I shouldn't speak on his behalf, but I do know that he does go into those old recordings and tempo map them and figure out why this sounded so great. And maybe it's a part slows down over time and it makes you feel like something's coming, or maybe it speeds up and builds your anxiety in your body, like to what's coming. And so there's a freedom and there's a beauty in kind of manipulating that way that you can build tension with speed increase and decrease. And when you use a click all the way through, you kind of lose that.
So yeah, you said it was Greg that's the guitar player of Car Bomb. Yeah, I met him briefly at NAMM this year, and I've been a fan of his since like like maybe the first album or whatever that came out long time ago. But dude, their tempo shifts are so incredible. It's part of the reason why you put a Car Bomb album on. You're just like, I want to be slayed by not knowing exactly how they pull this off. Yep, I'm slayed. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just wonderfully creative music.
One thing I find really cool about it is so there's some bands that just do like this math tech stuff, and to me it's not attractive personally, because there's something about it that is just too much. And I would say Car Bomb is like, they're doing maybe even crazier stuff than some of those bands, but they are giving it to you in a way that I can handle at least. Like, it's not too much that it's just annoying to listen to, but I don't know what they're doing. I can't figure it out. However, it's not too much to where it's like, oh, it's not like try hard. It doesn't feel like they're trying too hard. It feels like it's just second nature for them to be that technical and that advanced. And I'm a fan. So I'm doing a production thing right now. Guys got me writing a song with them. I'm doing a lot of studio work in quarantine time.
Cool.
And we were doing, he's like, sent me this song by David Maximicic. He's like, I like this thing going on, this tempo. And it was like, it's just upbeat. And the guitar part he sent me to like work off in the beginning was like really slow. I'm like, well, you understand, like, we're not going to get this intensity at this tempo. So the third part of the song, he wanted to be up to this tempo. And so I'm like, well, we can't just jump 30 BPM like that. So like, we're almost working on how to get it up there slowly. So like the last couple measures of the two previous parts, we'll do a slight ramp, because I don't want it to be jarring, but we got to get there. And so what we found in a couple places was just that slight tempo increase. I don't even know if the person listening will know exactly, because again, I'm trying to not make it jarring. I'm trying to make it really subtle. But we did find that it does make you feel like, oh, what's coming next, like internally. And so it's just really interesting what you can do. It makes me think more about entertaining more tempo changes in my music, because Born, we did a ton of them at certain times in our career. And then there was a couple years in my career where I'm like, I don't like that. Like, it sounds forced or something. So the last year or so, I'm kind of really getting into why it worked when we did it before, why I went through a phase where I felt like it sounded unnatural, and how I can try to incorporate how we get back to like the middle ground where we can do tempo changes, but don't feel like, well, should this just be another song at this point? Because this isn't even the same tempo. Like, I don't know. So I'm trying to getting into it as a student on my own terms. I'm not like YouTubing things, but I'm trying to learn what makes me feel a certain way and why it makes me feel a certain way, and then maybe implement it in the future.
That's cool. That's cool that you're still, I mean, you sound like you're an eternal student of sorts too, like that you don't feel like you've necessarily arrived, and you're open to what's the right way to move forward.
I think it's got its pros and cons. Like, for example, I've been playing guitar for 21 years now, and like, I'm signature guitar with keys, so I'm so blessed and everything. But there's so many days of the week that I pick up the guitar and I feel like I'm just terrible. And so like, I think there's a part of that that makes me get better. And so I think that's why I'm still a student of the instrument 21 years later. However, it's got its cons, because some days you're just hard on yourself and you feel bummed about it. But the next day it'll be the reason you get better, even if today's the reason you're kind of bummed about it, you know? So I don't know if I think it's, you know, your own worst critic and kind of turns you into a perfectionist that over time makes you better, even if you have those days where you're like, shit, that don't sound good. I haven't played guitar in 3 days. They're just, these aren't working together. This is picking faster and this is moving, or vice versa.
I do know those days, and I recently, when this quarantine first happened, I just played, and I played a bunch, and I was starting to feel like, yeah, like I'm kind of like going somewhere, I'm doing something, I'm like, you know, because a lot of it has to really do, and I know that it's been said so many thousands of times, but consistent practice over time can't be fucked with, really, because it's the thing that you will have days where you don't feel as dope in those consistent days.
Yep.
But man, like there's going to be more days that show up, because if you're doing that 1 or 2 hours every day and you show up for it, there's going to be like, it's going to be a week where like almost every day you feel like fire and you're just like, you can't almost do anything wrong. Like you're like, oh no, I'm like, and then you're gonna have to make up for that, and you have a couple shit days, you know, before the end of the year or something. But I see that also too, just as like, if you really want to achieve something, whatever that might be, that you kind of like learn to show up for yourself more often, and be okay, you know, with like the days, like, hey, the days are that I'm not great, that's okay, because I have to get those out of the way so that the other days will show up too, you know.
I know fellow Kiesel artist now, Mark Akubo from Veil Maya. We grew up in Chicago with them, so before we were signed to labels, we were playing free local shows in high school together and all that
Rad.
stuff. But you know, he talked to me one day, this is years ago, and because he's the majority songwriter of Veil, or like the songwriter for Veil.
Sure.
And he was like, man, I'm just going through this writer's block phase, and he's like, and I can't crack it right now. So at this moment in this one period of time, that's how he was feeling. And I think that's a question a lot of people ask all the time to any artist or any songwriter. It's like, how do you get through those moments? And so you said showing up, and so this is exactly what I told Mark. This is what works for me. This is what I do. I show up to a studio. Well, thankfully it's in my house now.
Yeah.
Every day. And so what I do is I sit down and I record something every single day, and I'll date it. If it's not connected to a song, I'll date it, bounce it out. So every single day, the goal is to show up, just get there. And at first, if you don't keep what you use, that's okay. But what you realize is, like, every day, you learn to take those days as it's okay, because there will be tomorrow and I will be here tomorrow. And so it makes those days feel a little bit less toxic and heavy on your shoulders, because if you show up every day, I promise you, you'll have more good days than bad, I think. But I think that if you just show up, like you're saying, be consistent every single day, then I don't even think writer's block, I'm not gonna say it doesn't exist, because I think it does, but like it's an easy way to eliminate it, and you don't have to keep that riff at all. And I don't know Will Swan personally, but in passing acquaintances, but Mark Akubo, who I'm just talking about, said that when he was with Will writing a song together for their new Dance Gavin Dance record, he had a folder, and it was just a riff folder. So that's a quick way for you to build up something like that, a library of riffs, is being there every day. It doesn't have to be connected to a song. Most commonly, I do open up my current song and work on that song. But if I have a writer's block phase, write a riff, save it, date it, and then you have a bank of things to go look at later. Apparently, Will, utilizes that a lot with Dance Gavin Dance.
That's awesome. I like that. And I also, I mean, I think that sometimes that writer's block will kind of be pointing towards maybe you're grinding too hard or flexing too hard on something, right? And that's why it's good to like change modes, and whatever that may be. It could be dropping off and going working on a different riff and not the current project that you're actually trying to finish. Or it could be, hey, get out, go for a walk, do some exercise, or, do live life, so that then you can then be inspired by the life living back to give into the creation again. I think hollow creation is a thing, right? Like, and I hate to like even because that eventually somebody goes, oh, is my creation hollow? They're like, like, well, don't take offense to it. It's just a real thing that that you have to do, because creating and writing and playing and everything that we're doing is technically a practice, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we even you who gets paid to do the thing that you love to do for a living, right? It's still a practice, even though you're a professional. So, and that's the thing that I think that, you know, I've had to kind of connect it to a little bit in a few different aspects of my world, but one of them is yoga teaching. And that's like, just even though I technically get paid for it and I'm technically licensed and everything, and I would be considered by most people to be a professional at it, it's still a practice, and it's never a perfect, you know, and that's kind of harkens back to the first conversation around letting some human qualities into your recordings and the whole thing. And when you squeeze out the humanity, you might be creating a hollow creation. Like it doesn't mean officially, depends on what your aim is, but you have to kind of practice so many hours to like kind of get through that and get to the human part, I think, sometimes.
I agree. I also have hollow, and I think it's kind of what you're saying, but also maybe a different side of the coin, or same side, different. I'll just say what I'm saying.
Sure.
So 9 to 5 is kind of like my studio time every day. I treat it like a job because it's actually my favorite part about being in a band. Like I love touring, but now after doing it for over a decade and seeing some cool places in the world, my favorite part rests in the studio with the creation, because I don't think there's a better feeling of when you finish something and it happens right here in this room. You just listen to it and you're just walking around. You're like, I just made this. It's so cool. So I'm like someone who's in the studio every single day. And now that people don't have jobs to go to, unfortunately, and all this stuff like that, what I'm finding on the internet is everyone's like, I'm in the studio every day now, writing. And so here's the weird part for me is you said I need to take in life to give to recording. So for me, I haven't been writing right now because I'm stuck in this house. And even though I'm still here 9 to 5, like I usually am, like I don't feel inspired because I feel hollow about the way that I'm writing right now. Like I need life experiences. I need to take things in. And even though I'm still here 9 to 5 normally, then I go to jiu-jitsu, and there's something about that's my exercise. And so that's like your yoga. And like, you know, when you're finished that hour or hour and a half, whatever it is, there's just some feeling that you get. It's just a reset. Whatever was bothering you earlier in the day is now gone. I need that. And then on the weekends, even if it's going to a concert, going to a bar, whatever, there's just some life to be living, being social. I have this book called, I don't see where it is, but it's just about how we're wired to connect as humans.
Yeah.
Even if you consider yourself introvert, you don't need to be social with everyone on the planet, but I still think you need your person or your small group to be social. You need life. You need to take in things like this. And yeah, so for me, like, thank God I'm mixing my solo record and we're doing art for the new Born record, because it's been hard for me to kind of write right now. I feel like I need more than my house because I feel there's like hollow because of that. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And I think what we're pointing at too, a part of it, at least in my philosophy that I've kind of begun to form to some degree, is that relationship is maybe the primary aspect of life. Like, I mean, and at a real basic, even scientific level, like the relationship between, you know, things and stuff and events, like the time and space between stuff. And so like, there's all this little like kind of scientific, cosmological like relationship, you know, and the theory of relativity and how one thing is relative to another, right? But then there's this social part of it with our human relationships and our psychological awareness that I think, is it Krishnamurti? I'm not sure who it was that wrote a book that was called The Mirror of Relationship, and it's really kind of the study like having a relationship with you tells me and informs me more about who I am. It as you reveal yourself and as I reveal myself, we learn more about ourselves. And it's this
beautiful.
Yeah, it's this weird thing. But if we take the time to kind of tune into that, then we can see how it's kind of the reason we're here, I think, you know, like, I mean, because that's one of the big cosmic questions, like, what's the meaning of life, you know? And, you know, Alan Watts would say, well, the meaning of life is to live. Like, you're doing it. It's
Yeah.
happening now. Like, you don't have to figure out some future event. You don't have to regret the thing that's already done. It's gone. We're here now. And in this now, we have the opportunity to reflect, mirror, to contrast with others. And the moment I say, you know what my favorite thing is, or this is how I do it, whatever, then you kind of go, there's an internal like switch that maybe it was there because somebody else already, presented some sort of opinion on the topic or whatever. And so you might already have a kind of a ready-made answer, but it's not until somebody else shows up with the thing or something happens to you that you kind of know how you feel about it. Like, like somebody goes, oh yeah, I really love this band, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, cool. I never really gave them a chance. I don't really know how I feel about it yet. Right. I don't know who I am in relationship to that thing yet. I'll give them a chance. Oh, I listened to them. You know what? For me, not happening. It's not my thing. I can hear the talent, but I'll listen to Born of Osiris instead, like that's my deal or whatever, like, and then, and that person gets to go back and go, oh, well, shit, if they don't like it the way I like it, is my perception accurate? And we kind of, we do this thing back and forth.
That, when you said the title of that book first, my mind started going, all right, what's that mean? Because within seconds you were explaining it.
Mm-hmm.
But even seconds into it, like, that's a gorgeous book title.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might have been The Happiness Hypothesis. I might be looking at it right now. Doesn't matter. But yeah, I find that like humans are wired to connect. We've studied animals, we've studied humans, and we've learned that like whether it's an animal they show its parents and they look at the way it works in its cage and does its thing, the way they test it, or whether it's human and depression levels and how much they're around people. It's just interesting in the fact that what you learn is that we are supposed to be connecting with each other. It's who we are as people. We've advanced ourselves with our connection and our communication to each other. And it's I think a lot about the introvert extrovert thing, because for a while there it was almost like cool on the internet, like, oh, I'm an introvert, so I'm staying home today. But like, it's interesting because what I find is and I considered myself that a long time. Like, anxiety for years, I used to be prescribed a medication. Long story, I decided to live without any of it and embrace anxiety and sadness and happiness and just put it into music and embrace that this is who I am, and my many sides make my music what it is. So but what I've learned is, even when I consider myself like an introvert, you still need your best friend or your girlfriend or your mom or your dad. Like, I think being an introvert fashionable a couple years back was a big mistake, because if you're that, then be that. That's cool. But like, I feel like when it becomes a fashionable thing and people start shutting themselves out, and like, I don't know, I don't think it's healthy. And I just find that even introverts need some group, whether it's really small or not, to connect. And I also think it depends on who you're talking to. Like, good people that have good communication will bring conversation out of people who consider themselves quiet. Like, I don't really care for small talk, but when it's the right person, like you or someone I know and care about, like, I'll talk all day. Whereas I'll have nothing to say to someone, and it doesn't mean anything that I dislike them or anything. It's just like, there's nothing here to say. But like, certain people, I find that a quiet person can just become talkative as hell because you're with the right person that makes you feel good and you have a connection.
There's a certain synergy, right? Yeah, I think I love what you are saying there, because that actually, to me, that points towards the kind of the paradox of like, okay, yes, we are all individual consciousnesses residing in our own meat suits, right? Okay, yes, scientifically, this is true. But the paradox is that we are all a part of the same event, right? So thinking about we're all a part of the same event. This is an event that's happening on this tiny blue dot in the middle of cosmic vast millions and trillions of light years of stuff being placed in a vast emptiness we can't quite comprehend. Even with our high technological, and it's I think it's a really funny thing is that like, because we have, it's part of the kind of ancient, like, concept of like ego sickness, or like, you know, being a, you know, the weighing too heavily on our individualistic ways, right? So like, and so the admiration, or the kind of you know, making it cool to be an introvert and loner, and like, which we've had multiple phases. If you look back in the 50s, there's each kind of generation has its own little version of like, he's a, you know, John Wayne was a tough, rugged individual, right? Like, and he played these type of things, and that mirrored, that was an example to a whole generation of men and women on how a man should act or be, or blah blah blah, right? And this in this way, so it's interesting to just kind of take a few steps back and consider that, we are individuals, but we are all, there's no way we're not all one thing. Like we all live on the same planet. Everybody you've ever heard about, ever read about, all the stories, they all lived and died right here on this little rock. You know, and we'll do the same thing. We'll all pass away. All our best projects, all our very best work, and our worst you know, experiences, all will be, you know, incinerated when the sun explodes. So we're in this together in that way, and many other ways, but in that way especially, it's like to know that like it's all equal. Like nobody, the cosmos won't remember us the way we would believe or would hope that would, but the eventuality is like flatline kind of for everything. So so the extrovert, you know, needs a little bit of introversion, you know, and it's that yin and the yang, and then the introvert needs a little bit of extroversion, you know, and to be balanced, and to stay healthy, and to stay connected without withering and dying in our studio by our little lonesome selves. That's my 2 cents.
I think it's beautiful, and now it's got my mind going in a million different directions. I think what's right off the bat, I thought was very interesting, is how you called what's happening right now an event. And it's big picture stuff, because I think the most of us walk around day to day, and I don't think anyone would say I'm the center of the universe. No one would say that out loud, but I think our view of the universe, this is the center of it. Like, I don't think, not intentionally, but I think a lot of people's perception of, I mean, this is all the perception we have, is what we see and smell and hear right here in front of us. So it feels like everything is outside around this, but I just find it very interesting that you call this all one event, because I do think we're all one. I hate that we go into war over religion and all this stuff, when if you think about, like, if the world, everyone on it, no matter what their religion, what country they're from, if we all work together, oh my God, think of the power this earth would have, dude. But instead we're like, you don't believe what I believe? I want to just kill you and your whole family. Like, it's so insane to me. And, you know, I'm sure there's people that have served, and I don't want to belittle anything of anyone that's been overseas or fought in any war. That's not my point at all. I just really think of how interesting it would be if everyone on this planet came together to help each other. I think it's a simple thing that you can say, and I know it's a complicated thing to accomplish, and there's so many things, that different ways to look at it, but I think about it all the time. I'm reading this book called The Gods of Eden, and it talks about, in particular, that they think that there's like alien involvement in the earth, and like the way things have shaped. So I'm not saying you even need to believe that. And I like to read books that are kind of out there to get different takes. I think it's fun. So I'm not saying I subscribe to everything I read, but it was, this particular book was saying, and this is what got me thinking of it, it was saying like, they're trying to stir chaos, because they don't want us like leveling up as humans. So please don't think I'm some alien conspiracist in that direction. But the one thing it did make me think is, for any reason, if we were not busy arguing and fighting and going to war, for any reason, aliens or not, like, just would be so beautiful if everyone did really become one, like you said, because we are one. We don't always act like it. And how interesting it would be, where this world would be if we were all just one team.
So I love that, and in right dead center in the middle of my little hippie heart, like I have the same dream, right? Like I have the same, like, oh man, you know, what if there was, you know, the possibility for us to come together? And I will speak to that in the way that I know how. And it's like, as much as I love that, it's a really beautiful thought. that if we look, there's a bunch of different ways to look at it, right? And one of them is that if we were to attempt to arrange everything in your room, like in your studio right now, arrange everything to be up and no down.
Yeah.
First of all, is that even conceivable?
Yeah.
Right? You know, and if everything is up and you erase down, then there's nothing to contrast or compare to. There's no backdrop. So you when you remove the backdrop, then I don't know where I stand.
Yeah.
If you're a man by yourself on an island, you don't. I mean, there's a low threshold for growth because there's not somebody there giving you feedback, right? And feedback is important. It's part of our growth. We've seen it in every stage of our life, every stage of our evolution, that if there wasn't some sort of tension to resolve, then there wouldn't be any reason to grow, no reason to rise. And
very good point.
So in that way of kind of starting to look at things, I think that, yes, I mean, that would be wonderful, but at the same time, we're I think if we can just tip the scale in the favor, like if it's 60-40 would be fine with me, right? Like lately, I think the problem is that lately we feel like it's 250-50, right? And I think that the 50-50 thing is actually, I think that's a fake news is what I really think. Okay. I think that the advent of 24-hour news cycle and how it's been really leaned on hard with the current administration and previous administrations, even though they looked better and felt better. And, you know, I'm a fan of Barack Obama, but I'm not, you know, like he did shit that I'm not stoked on either. You know, he had to play the role of president, but hey, he's my favorite one so far. Like he was the coolest, you know, like I would definitely want to hang out with him and Michelle and those kids over anybody else that's ever been in the White House. But, but I say all that, you know, to say that like, just because it feels a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it is. There's a lot of spin going on. And, I'll bring up this little story I like to kind of reiterate because Alan Watts is famous. I'm an Alan Watts junkie. By the way, I'm such a junkie. Like I have all of his lectures. I mean, there might be one or two that I don't have yet, but I have pretty much everything on audio, and I've got most of his books. And he's pushed me into a lot of other to research a lot of people that he researched, you know, and that he's like cites a lot of resources around like philosophical ideas and ways to look at the world. And one of the things that he's famous for, I don't say famous, but like known for describing is he's like, okay, so like imagine yourself, you're the creator, infinite mind. Okay. Right. Like in all directions, you know, the future, the past, that what's to come, all these things. Right. And beyond what we're able to fully conceive of, because otherwise it wouldn't be, if we could conceive of it, then we would be doing that. Right. But so it's far beyond. So if you could imagine, just imagine yourself as the mind of God and what would be the best game going for that type of being, right? And he says, think about it. That would how boring. If you could do anything you wanted all the time, forever and ever. How long before you're bored, right? How long before I always win? My team always wins, and this is like the same thing as trying to arrange everything up with no down, right? So if I'm always winning, now like you and I, if we start playing chess or any game or anything, and I'm always winning, it's only a matter of time if you're like, man, fuck this. This isn't any fun anymore. Like I don't ever win. And for me, it's only a matter of time before I go, fuck this, man. I'm always winning. Like you got to like sharpen your game. Like, and so that there's no tension. There's no real release. It's just domination. And so for an infinite being, if he, she, it got bored of its infinite ability, the best game going would be to forget that you were God, that you had all those things, right? And so why not create the earth, create the universe, set it all in motion, divide your infinite consciousness up into all these living beings, living things, and forget. And each one of them would be at a different stage, you know, essentially of remembering its true source.
Yeah.
So and that, I love that vision of it, because I think about, that vision of God like makes sense, because we're all little slivers of that initial creative cosmic energy that have amnesia, so to speak, and we're all at different stages of waking up to what is our true nature.
It's beautiful, and it's such a good point, because it goes back to things I even said earlier. Like, so yeah, of course, most people would say it's beautiful if everyone just came together. But you're right. Like I said earlier, the bad days where I feel like I'm a crappy guitar player turn into me rising up and getting better. And maybe the tension on this planet does force us to own up and become better and grow. And it's for example, like when we do the happiness tests, we do them on rich people and we do them in people in jail. And you were talking about perception, it's everything. And so what we found is, like, everyone's like, oh, if I just had this money, or if I had this new watch, or if I had this new this. What we find is that, like, these bumps in happiness, like, they level out all of them. And even if it's like, here's my new watch, boom, and now I'm in jail, that's a dip. But then when it becomes your reality, it comes back up. So what we found is we did these I say we, not me, but they've done these tests on people that are in jail, and it's a happiness test, and rich people will take the same happiness test. And what they found is, like, once you adjust to what it is, like, everyone's the same amount of happy. And also, like, what I find it interesting is, what is extreme happiness if you don't know what extreme sadness is? That's kind of exactly, to bring it back to what you were just saying, like, that tension, that like, it's almost like if everything was up, it's all happiness, then it almost becomes the new normal. Like, and then it's just, this is normal again, and we get used to it, and it's our new normal. And so I agree with you. You do need tension to A, grow, and B, realize the good things are so good. And so, yeah, it's not as simple as, I wish everyone would stop fighting and just get along. It's just, it's a concept that I think everyone thinks about, but you can't figure it out. Like, it's too big or something.
Well, it's part of what makes it all so beautiful to me. I think that the fact that, okay, nothing lasts forever, and especially these meat suits that we're driving around, right? Like, those definitely have a timestamp on them, and you know, if that, and I think that's where I want to pull it full circle. I mean, it's part of what we were describing with the music too. Okay, the human quality, like, you want dynamic in your songwriting, you want dynamic in your production, you want dynamic because you aren't just a stone cold rock. You're not just that machine-like quality. You're an organic being that is a total fucking mystery, bro. Your life and how you exist, we don't actually know. We know you came from your mom and your dad. We get that. We know that much. But how that happened and how that happens, no matter even where we're at scientifically, if you put the, like, most advanced, like, scientist in the room, I'd be like, yo, how do you grow your hair? Do you know? You don't fucking know how you grow your hair.
Yeah.
How do you beat your heart? You have no clue. Yeah. Like, that person might be able to cite off all kinds of, well, you know, this affects that, you know, yeah, I know, but you don't know how you do it. Like, you can't explain how you do what you do to me in any real way. So and the mystery is a part of the just underlying beauty of our existence, right? It's not going to last forever. It's a limited time only, you know. All things must go. And so because of that, each little moment we capture, each little moment where we face each other and we mirror and we're like, oh wow, you like that, I like that too, oh okay, cool. Like, you know, I don't really want to talk to many people, but I like talking to you, you know, and you make me want to like chat it up and talk and explore my own thinking, you know,
Yeah.
my own being. And I think that's why we're here. I think we're literally here to reflect to each other, to allow it to create little tensions. Even now, this is the tougher part, right? Is like accepting those that are outside of our own values. Like, you know, those that that I don't favor. We don't have same favor in values or life or anything, like, and it feels very separate, and it feels very like, oh, I'm not one with them. I'm one with all the good people on this planet, but not those motherfuckers. No, I'm not gonna, you know. But the truth is that those people supply the necessary tension for the growth of the planet, for the individual growth, for the community growth, and so if we are to actually look at our existence and our event holistically, as in the whole thing, then we have to embrace the darker sides of things that we, you know, aren't always stoked to look at. You know, Jung would say shadow self, or, you know, different philosophical ways of kind of looking at it, but quite literally, that's the backdrop for anything that's, you know, amazing in light to happen. Like, I only know that there's light here because there was darkness previously, you know. That's the only reason why I know.
I think it's a beautiful way to look at the darker things, is that you find that there's a silver lining in it. And it shows us what's happiness. It shows us that we need that turmoil. And I think that's the coolest way to look at, like, I guess any issue in life is, how can I grow from this? You know, I guess it's a tough subject, and I am not an expert on how parents affect their kids, but I've seen two examples of abusive parents and families. One, they grow up and they become abusive too, because that's what they know. And then you see the other hand where they're abused and they're like, I am never going to be this way. And they take that and they find that to grow from. And so I know that's one example, and it's not something I have personal experience in and should maybe even speak on, but it's just one example of how you can be delivered complete hardship in life. On any level. And if you can say, how am I going to grow from this? Then you can turn it into somewhat of a positive, even dark things. And then, or just find that, you know, just that silver lining of do it with anything in life. I think that's almost more of a key to happiness than that new watch or $1 million or something like that. Like, is perception. I used to want to call like all my solo stuff just perception. I think it's like a cliche word, but man, it is everything, right? Like,
it is.
You can look at anything any way you want. And so in reality, I think perception is one of the most important words, like, in our vocabulary, and things to like analyze. It's like how we perceive hardships and good things too. And so yeah, almost any art I've ever wanted to make, I was like, I'm going to call it perception, but I think it's been done 1 million times, so I didn't.
Well, it actually speaks to, because I think a lot of people have, you know, we're all working with that. And it's interesting. If you don't know about it, I encourage you to check out this older movie. It's a dialogue heavy movie called Mind Walk.
Okay.
And it's like I'm going to paraphrase, loosely screw up like who the characters are, but there's like, I think one's a scientist, one's a writer, and one's like a politician or something like that, I think. And they all end up at this castle, this famous castle in, that's like, you can only get to it when it's low tide type of thing. I forget, it might be in France. It's a really cool thing. And it's really simply filmed. I think it came out in the 90s, and it's probably free on YouTube, Mind Walk. But it's really beautiful because it follows them around this castle as they meet, and then they all end up sharing their different perceptions of the world. And there's different rooms in the castle that evoke different parts of the conversation, and they have little disagreements around things. And one of the characters kind of comes to at one point and says, what we have here really is a crisis of perception, right?
Wow.
Like,
That's a better title.
right, you're like, well, and I have a old buddy of mine that had another band. He was in my band for a little while, but he was in a previous band called Expiration Date, and they like we shared that movie so much, and they made their album Crisis Perception. It wouldn't matter.
There
You could still do it. You could still do it because I mean I don't even think anybody knows that record because it's just a local band from Seattle. But I just think that that's a really good way of putting it. In that and it's part of the ego thing. It's part of like, oh well, this is where I'm from and this is what I'm used to, and you know, not kind of being cut off from the community mindset and being able to see, because we've been sold this kind of story that like, hey, you gotta be rugged and you gotta like pick yourself up by your bootstraps and only you are gonna save you. And there's a part of that is there's a truth in that.
Yeah.
But it's not the whole truth. That's like, and truths that aren't whole aren't really wholesome for you. They're not really healthy ultimately, right? So, you know, yes, you do need to be, you know, as best you can, but like there's no way none of us can get along without others. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to do it. So trying to see each other's point of view, trying to see ourselves in others, I think is one of the little windows into being more compassionate, being more concerned towards, you know, the health of others. Because like, hey, I want to be healthy. I want to be safe.
Yeah.
And so when we see other people that aren't healthy and aren't safe, like that should be of concern. It just should be.
I agree.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing. And it's interesting. They almost say like, if you want to win an argument or negotiation, like you should be able to argue both sides of it. And I think makes perfect sense. It's almost one thing I love about podcasts. And you mentioned the Rogan one earlier, which I think obviously anyone who's seen a podcast has probably seen a Rogan one. I love the fact that like people can get and see both sides. I love that podcasts aren't, even if you and I had completely different beliefs, what I love about the format is that it can be like, this is what I think, this is what you think, and it's almost like you see each other's sides and you become in the middle and be like, this is okay. And I love that it's never like, and so I think it's healthy. You see two sides of something, and it's almost good to just, I think it's how you get the whole picture. It's the most beautiful way to feel something, is if you can kind of see the other side too. It's the only healthy way to feel one way, is to even kind of see. I see why you say that. I disagree one thing or another, but you're right. The whole truth, you know, it's not wholesome. It's like I'm going to quote that sometime. Yeah, the whole truth, unless it's whole, you know, it's not there if you only have one side of the coin.
And one of my favorite like I think Alan Watts got it from Jay Krishnamurti, I think, because Krishnamurti was so anti, like I love, if you don't know Krishnamurti, he's really worth checking out too, because he's got some really great talks, and his to sum up like his standpoint, I mean, he is very, very deep and could, you know, could go on many different topics, but ultimately he's like, don't be concerned with anybody's opinion. Don't follow anybody for any reason. You're the person, and you're the one that has to live this life. So this person over here that's got all this affluence and influence and you know, big loud opinions about this and that, don't be swayed by any of that. You check in and do what you know needs to be done, so to speak. And so like, I think it's kind of a paraphrase, and I'm sure which one is which, but they both kind of have said it. And it's like, if you're interested in the actual truth, be not concerned with right or wrong, because the right or wrong is the disease of the mind, right? Like it's one of the diseases that we get into, because we're like, oh, well, I want to be on the winning team. Absolutely. And so if you're arguing for being right and not actually interested in the truth, then like we're not really having a solid conversation to begin with.
100%.
Right. So let's start.
The human will get so wrapped up in like they get so wrapped up in winning the argument that they'll start hopping on the wagon of things to say to win the argument instead of things to say that were true to my original thought. Because humans, like, obviously, like you said, they want to win by nature, and it's a healthy thing, I guess, overall to want to be, you know. But in the sake of conversation or argument, like, I've seen it so many times, and I think we're all maybe even guilty of it. Like, you get into an argument and you believe this and they believe that, but then it becomes like you got this turmoil, this unsolid ground, and then you start saying, like, to win this argument, I'm gonna need to reach and grab something from here, where originally I was here, but I have to grab from this and this to get to win here, and then you stray from the path and you end up like saying things that maybe you don't even believe go along with the original argument just because you kind of want to come on top. And you're right, you lose sight of you're not having the right conversation at all if it's a win or lose. It's not the healthiest way to resolve anything, because you don't win that way in the end. If you're grasping for straws to get that win, that you're taking things that you didn't necessarily believe in the first place, it's like it's not even a true win, even if it feels like it.
I couldn't agree more. I would say even to further that a little bit is that there's this concept of I don't know if you've heard the term, but the fool who persists in his folly eventually becomes wise. I'm not sure if you've heard that. So it's something that I wasn't really I'd heard it a couple of times, and I was like, fool who persists in his folly eventually becomes wise. And over time, I've had multiple little, like, in these different talks that I listen to where it's kind of been explained more. And kind of what it is like it's so maybe you are right. Okay, you're totally right. You're on the right side of history. You're like, you feel justified. And this is kind of like almost the worst kind in a strange way, because when you feel righteous and indignant about a thing, that's the time to check yourself right there, right? Because like, then you're almost taking the same kind of extreme point of view as maybe those that have been oppressing you or the people that you're fighting for. Let's say, like say, and that's what happens in the left a lot in America, is that we have people that really mean well, bleeding heart liberals, what people will call them, right? Like they really mean well, the Greenpeacers, the PETA people that don't want to see animals suffering. And in the wake of them trying to do good, they end up doing a bunch of bad.
Oh, yeah, you see it all the time.
Right? So there's this, so the fool who persists in his folly becomes wise is the opposite of that kind of. It's like the guy, like, so, and it's born of like a Hindu kind of thought, because Hindu thought is more circular and cyclical versus like linear, the way that a lot of the rest of the world feels about birth and then death. Like, this is the timeline from here to here, point A, point B, there's a couple of different things in between, blah blah blah. But the Hindu way of seeing things is that, hey, you don't get it right this time, bro, like there's infinite lives, like you'll get it right eventually. And so there's a little bit of like kind of lackadaisical quality to it, but there's also this grand cycle of acceptance quality to it, where it's like, you might not understand, we may not connect this lifetime, but eventually after umpteen amount of incarnations, your soul will evolve to the point of a Buddha, so to speak, right? Of an enlightened person. And in that, if you can conceive of that type of, long form cycle of learning, then that breeds acceptance in a person that kind of comes along to that realization of like, okay, every person, no matter how much I agree or disagree, or judge them into some little weird, mental box, they're all playing their perfect part. Like there's no grain of sand that in the universe that's out of place. And
it's the most beautiful possible way to look at anything.
I'm constantly in awe of that, and it's kind of a reoccurring meditation that I remind myself of, and that especially when I get down on myself or frustrated with any particular small thing in my life, challenge, I'm like, oh, I've faced all these things before, but here I am, like I literally have a person I'm not really happy with that lives like next to me. To be honest, like I've got like this person on the property where I've I've had like this run-in, this woman, and I won't go into detail, but like she lives on the property here with us, and there's only, you know, like 5 of us in this one kind of complex or whatever. And she's been my teacher, dude. Like she's got me so good. I've gotten so mad like so many times, and I'm like, wow, I keep fucking letting her win this thing. Like, and more so what it's doing is the relation, you know, I wouldn't ever want to say our relationship, my relationship with her, because I don't feel like I have one, but the truth is there is one. And her relationship to me has been pointing towards the work that I still need to do. That like I consider myself a relatively evolved, relatively mature human being that's, you know, somewhat adult most of the times, you know, and even though I, you know, can teach yoga and I can do podcasts and like perform, you know, do high-end contracts for Kiesel and previous jobs at Dunlop, whatever, I can perform at a high level. Here's this average everyday woman has just like poked me, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so mad. And I find myself riled up. I'm like, okay, well, I could get mad at her, or I could really actually look at what it's pointing to. And that is that as calm and cool and collected as I would like to be all the time, I still have parts of me that are angry. I still have parts of me that are traumatized from things that happened in childhood. I'm still a human being, and I still have reactionary, you know, thoughts and feelings at times. And you know, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I forget, I'm probably going to misquote it, but it was like, you know, I won't even guess which one it was, but it was like a president or someone who said, you can learn something from everyone. You can walk into a room as the president. This one is supposed to be an evolved, top of the mind, top of everything, smart, someone who can help a group, a large group. Anyways, he says you can walk into a room, you can learn from the perceived dumbest person in there. Like anyone can show you something. And for someone like, again, like you're high pressure situations with contracts and stuff, but then you also like can know how to center it with yoga and maybe affirmations and things like this. And then you have this someone who you may perceive as just like this normal woman. You're like, why is she getting under my skin? And then you're like, well, maybe it's forcing growth. There is something I haven't tapped into yet to figure out why it's bothering me, and then you can grow from it. And that's your opportunity to grow if you take that route. You know what I mean? Or you could just get rotten with her and be like, well, screw this, and shut out why it's making you mad. But if you can look at why and grow from it, then you come on top of that situation, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's pointed out that, I mean, this is the anytime I get mad or I get angry or like to the point where I want to cuss somebody out or like let's have any thought of like, yeah, well, I'm gonna just anytime I get to that point, I'm like, wow, man, you know, like we are all, it's a kind of a level playing field. Like as far as you think you're going to take the evolution and like being a nice person or any of these things, I think that everybody is kind of a killer inside at some point. Like, and I don't mean that like in a strange way or like you know, I think maybe you can hear what I'm saying, that if you push anybody to a certain point, you take X amount away from them, or you push their buttons just right. You know, murder is like on its way, you know, like and that's like more Lord of the Flies kind of, you know, thing. But in you can see like these remnants of that type of thing just in like social interaction. I mean, I would never harm her. I have no intention of that, and I don't want to harm anyone. But man, you know, bugs that are not supposed to be in my house, they piss me off too. And I want to take them outside, and I take them, a lot of them outside, but then I go on a killing spree. Like I want to be the Buddhist guy that's like, every one of these bugs, I'm going to put them in a cup and I'm going to take them outside. Here you go, little bug. I know you're a little consciousness, like get out of my house. And then like, if I get infested with ants or roaches or something, or fly, I'm a mass murderer, you know? And like, I'm just, you know, but so it's in me on some level, you know, like under the right circumstances, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm watching a show right now. It's called Survivor. I'm sure you've heard of it, but the particular season of Survivor we're watching is we, meaning my wife and I, is called Millennials versus Gen X. So this is truly, you strip everything away from these people, you put them on an island, they have to live. And so you're talking about what you get when, and at the beginning of the show, the host says, you're the millennials, you're Gen X. And what do you think about the other one? Gen X says, how the millennials, they have everything handed to them. They do everything on a computer screen. We had to grow up the hard way, walking 5 miles to and from work every day uphill. That's the cliche.
Yeah.
And so they look at the millennials like you're a joke. And then the millennials look at Gen X on the show and they're like, oh, well, we're young, we're more fit. And we just have a different set of problems. And your mindset is too old school. You don't got anything. So, but then you strip everything away from them, put them on an island. And it is a social game because you vote out the weakest link. You don't just lose physical challenge and then get cut out. So it's a social game, Survivor. That's exactly what you're talking about. It's each one thinks they have the upper hand, but like you said, when you strip everything back, everyone's a killer in their own way. Regarding of age, this person streams video games for a living, and this guy runs a Fortune 500 company, and they think they have their advantage. But then next thing you know, they're on a team in the woods together, Lord of the Flies style, and super interesting. I'm not finished yet, so I don't know how it plays out, but it's very interesting to see that we all are on an equal playing field, no matter what. So many years of different experience in life and learning and growing up different ways. You're right. We're all on the same playing field, whether we realize it or not.
It's true, man. I have to say, and just kind of shift a little bit, like I'll just shift towards a kind of a thought around gratitude, because I've seeing so many stories like in my feed around friends of friends, either passing away like from COVID or other complications. I mean, the world is always killing people. Like there's no shortage. I mean, and especially in the last 4 or 5 years, seeing so many icons pass away, Prince and David Bowie, and is Lemmy, all these people that in some ways as kids growing up, you're like, they'll never die. They're immortal because they are supreme creatives, but their meat suit has to go too at some point, strangely enough. And I guess lately it's been interesting. I've had a few people I just hearing stories about just ragged situations, and without going into details, I guess it's just taking stock. Every time I hear that, I'm like, wow, man, like I'm so lucky. Like right this minute, right now, like I have both my eyes, my hearing is here, my body, my meat suit's in relative health, and and I have great friends. I have a wonderful job. I have multiple wonderful jobs, that I get to do. I don't have to do them. I've worked really hard. I had to do a lot of things, or I made myself do. I didn't ever have to do any of that stuff really, but certain requirements under certain, contracts and agreements. But I found such joy in, before I go to bed, just saying thanks, Cosmos, thanks. And I'm so thankful. I have my dog, kind of being quarantined and having somebody around that like I can hug, and that like is always looking out for me and wanting to go for walks. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Okay, cool, let's go. And that whole vibe, and it's such a powerful antidepressant to pour gratitude on your life and on what's happening right now. I mean, even if out there theoretically something is happening that may affect you in some sort of negative way, and you're anticipating it, okay, but is it here right now? Are you in physical pain right now? And if you can kind of separate the two a little bit and come in contact with reality a little bit more, and this is a lead in to like talk about meditation or in stillness and stuff like that, if you can be aware of this moment and right now, then a lot of that stuff, it becomes background noise, and there can be immediate joy that can be enjoyed.
Yeah, I think I briefly touched earlier on like when I had topic of anxiety. A few years it was kind of crippling for me, and One of the ways that I don't want to go too far into it because I think it'll just take forever. But I ended up, it was a podcast I watched, and they said, hey, what about when people didn't have these pills to take to solve their anxiety? What did they do? They just got through life. And I was like,
Mm.
you know what? Yeah, maybe sadness is a part of life, and maybe I'll write a sad song that'll live forever because of it. And so just channel it in a right way. And the reason I got into anxiety on this topic right now is because one of the ways to get over it for me was to think about what's the worst case scenario of your fear. So if I'm like, oh, this person, I'm gonna go out and I'm socially scared, I have anxiety, whatever. Then you think, what's the worst case scenario? Oh, you end up in a conversation that someone puts you down, whatever the worst case scenario of your thinking. Usually you realize is like you can totally survive it. And that helped to just be like, I'm so scared of something right now, but when I think of the worst possible scenario, will I survive it? Yes. Have I survived harder things already? Yes. And let's go back to what you were saying. Maybe I can find a silver lining and be stronger from it. And maybe each thing that I conquer that scared me at first, maybe I won't be as scared the next time around. And now I'm winning. And maybe even look at anxiety like, hey, our minds have this fight or flight response, and it's why we've evolved as the leading species on this planet. Like it is, your brain is, maybe it's on your side. Maybe that fear is just, instead of you thinking your brain's against you, like, oh, I'm not one with my brain, this is scary. Maybe your brain's like, hey, worry about this because it's a potential threat. In reality, it's almost on your side. Evolutionary terms would have said, hey,
Mm-hmm.
that thing over there is going to attack you. Be afraid. So I think people they look at it like, my brain's not on my team. I shouldn't feel sad. I shouldn't feel scared. I shouldn't feel this. When in reality, those are all normal feelings of life. And your brain's just, maybe it's overreacting, but maybe when I'm in the studio, my overreactive brain is a positive thing. I think of more avenues to take this song because my brain is overactive. So you kind of just look at it like it's not a bad thing. It's not the end of the world. And it can help you.
Mm. Yeah, I really like that. Well, and I think that where we're at, and I was just discussing this maybe the other day with Cole Rowland, I think on the pod. It was I don't know, maybe it was with him or Tim Miller, I'm not sure, one of the other Kiesel bros. We were talking about how the anxiety and the fight or flight scenario it's been so helpful for our evolutionary and for our survival of our species, right? And I think that what we're finding out now is that because we primarily live in the mind and as on a whole, a lot less in the body, because we used to wake up and the primary thrust of our day was physical survival. I have to gather, I have to, deal with all the things of keeping predators away, hunting and providing for whatever the scenario might be. And so those things kind of sync up and that makes sense. In the modern age, we've produced a lot of kind of what could be considered false timelines. Like we do that on projects, like oh, I've got to have this done by such and such. Like, well, do you? Or is that your goal to have it done by them? Because sometimes the false timeline, it works in your favor because you're like, hey, everybody, like, I got to tell everybody that we're going to be there at 9 a.m. knowing that 3 people are usually habitually late, and really you don't have to be there till 9:30, so you're good. Like, there's ways in which setting goals obviously help us to achieve the idea that we have in mind. But there's this other side of it where, like, we're knowing now more and more with more and more testing and results and stuff and watching that, like, the social media's kind of messed our game up a little bit by getting these weird rewards of the little red thing on Facebook or the little hearts and then like the negative commenting kind of spiking the fight or flight thing when it's not a real thing that's going to harm us.
No threat.
Yeah, it's a false threat. It's really what it ultimately comes down to. And so to counteract that, to work toward, and that the fight or flight is technically considered the sympathetic nervous system. And then the rest and digest mode is called parasympathetic, right? And parasympathetic is when we're calm, we're cool, we're relaxed, and the body can digest the food, and it because when the fight or flight mode, it, as you know, probably, like if you have to run from a tiger, like all your blood is like used to like go to the proper organs, like just to like get us away from the thing that we stop. The digestion stops, and the blood goes to your legs and to your mind, and you make quick decisions, and you're either running or fighting for your life. Like, this is the deal, right? So
Yeah.
so it shuts down, and when it's in that mode too long, the body becomes inflamed. It's not properly digesting or transmuting the energy in putting things in the right place. And we're a culture that kind of lives in that place because of how all of the mental things, all the 24-hour news cycle, like that keeps us in a fight or flight. Oh, fuck, I got anxiety, man. Are the Koreans going to bomb us? Like, is China really out to get us with this disease? Oh, the Russians, they've hacked us. Like every little thing, and so that's like kind of the, if nothing else, more than anything, like my reason for trying to kind of gently push yoga and meditation on the world as often as I can. Cause I'm like, yo, dude, like it's going to work out. We're all going to die no matter what. Don't worry about that. I know that we'd love for our story to end with a happy ending and all that. Maybe there'll be a version of that for you or for me or somebody, but like, it's not promised to everyone. So, but what you do have is right now. And what you can do right now is take a long, slow, deep breath, right? That's what you can't, you're in control of that. You can do that, right? You can't really control or do much of any fucking thing else, strangely enough. I mean, we're granted the grace of being able to do other things, with our time, but in respect to anxiety and regret, watching the breath and feeling into the body from the inside out helps us come in contact with the reality that is now. Like, this body lives now. It doesn't live yesterday, don't live tomorrow. So, and it's calming. I find it calming. Not every, there slightly differences,
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that my exercise, my release was jiu-jitsu. So obviously everything's closed right now. So I took up yoga like a couple weeks ago. I've been talking to you privately about it a little bit. And it's just been that for me. And we're doing this one 30-day challenge with this yoga with Cassandra. I don't know if she's a famous YouTuber or just something that my wife found, but she does every day with affirmations. So each class we do, we're behind. So we do like 3 of them a day because sometimes we'll skip a day or whatever. Yeah, so it's just been nice to replace the exercise that I don't get out, elsewhere. And I've just been fascinated with it and want to talk to you more about it. Like, I'm seeing more about my body and feeling things I didn't know. Like, I could feel about like ways my core can bend that I didn't even realize, and open the hips up, and it's been great. So I had a question for you. Like, she does affirmations with her yoga. Is that something that you do or you believe in, or do you find helps? Is saying something that does calm you down or having something to repeat?
Yeah, it's funny. My very first teacher, Annalisa Cunningham, all these years ago, when I was around 20, it was my first yoga class, a friend took me. Her whole, my whole yoga thing started off with a practice that had affirmations in it, and I really like it. And I'm actually in the process. I haven't completed it yet, but I'm in the process of going back and learning her 40-minute stretch and relaxation sequence that she attached the different affirmations to, because I want to do it as like a tribute to her, and then invite her and to be part of the thing, because she's got Lyme's disease and hasn't been able to practice or teach for a long time in the way that she would like to. But I'm very familiar with the affirmation quality, and it stuck with me. She used to use in Warrior 2, she would use the affirmation, I am a warrior of the heart.
Yeah.
I am a warrior of the heart. And it's like, and it's this place where you got your arms
Yep.
spread out, right? You know, warrior two, and you're gazing, and there's like, it's this big, you're taking up a lot of space, and your heart is exposed.
Yeah.
And it's something that feels so good about that, you know? And I think words have such power, and when you put them in the right order and with the right intention behind them, it's just like it's just like music, and you infuse a thing with your intention, and that's how it can, when somebody has clear, honest intention towards other humans around, or a situation around healing or betterment, crazy like things move and shift in ways that you're like, why is that? It's kind of magic. It's kind of magic.
I think.
Are you feeling good because of these affirmations with these classes?
So for me, like, I haven't. She says I'm from the TV, and so, but I'm not necessarily repeating them so much in my head. So okay, here's why. Like the first week, I found that some of the positions, like I was focusing so hard on just holding them, particularly like some of the lunges where it's like I haven't used that particular muscle that way. So the first week I was like almost not even focusing on my breathing because I was just focusing on holding myself in this position. And then, you know, now I think we're on like the third week or something. So now I'm able to like do all these positions, and I can just focus on deep breath in and out. And so, and now I'm able to start repeating these things into my head, where like the first week I was just like, God, this is hard, and I'm just trying to do it. But I'm finally starting to get, well, first know them by name, which is important. So some of them you need to look up, and some of them you need to look down. And so for the first week, she's going through all these positions, and I don't know them by name. So I would have to like look at the TV a lot. And so I was interrupting myself by looking at the TV, and I was not doing the breathing because some of the positions were hard. Obviously not all of them, but like certain ones are hard to hold.
Sure.
So by week 3, now I've got my breath. I know them by name. I don't need to stare at the TV to know that I'm doing this position a certain way and correctly. And so yeah, I feel like day 1, I felt good completing it. Just like anything you do exercise wise, like even if it's hard in the moment, you know, you always feel good after. You know, it's like, oh, it sucks to go to the gym every day, but you know, every time you leave the gym, you feel good. So day 1, I had that, but week 3, I now know that I'm doing it a little more correctly with breathing, and I'm getting even more out of it. So it's just on the trajectory, the path that we're on with it now. I'm just becoming more and more of a fan each day, and don't want to stop doing it when we can get back out of the house and back to class and back to the gym. It's not something I want to get out of again. I think now that I've implemented it into life, life's better with it. And so, yeah, I'm just more of a fan every day.
That's amazing, man. I'm so glad to hear that. It's makes me so happy because it's affected my life in such a profound way that, you know, it's one of those things where like when I first started really feeling the benefit of it, I was like, oh, I want to go all total newborn Christian on everybody's ass with this thing. Like, everybody's got to do yoga. You got to be saved, you know, learn to meditate, like be on my team, you know? And, but quickly, you know, part of the thing with yoga, and, it's such a kind of, it's such a big, vast subject. People that, excuse me, you know, if you only know about yoga on a surface level, it's easy to be able to dismiss. Oh, it's a bunch of stretching. Cute girls do it. That's nice, you know. And then you might come along and take a class, and you're like, oh, I didn't even know I could feel these parts in my body. And
exactly.
And hopefully you're brought into it with a good teacher, and they're not making you feel weird because you can't do something or whatever. A lot of that stuff. It's just, there's a big curve. And if you're willing to submit to the curve a little bit and just continue to look up at the TV or at the teacher, or look around in your class when classes open up again, then you'll learn really quick. And the cool thing is, you know, it's not like other sports or things where you're looking for this quality of perfection. There's always something to aim for, thankfully, and to favor. But there's a lot of acceptance in different body shapes, and like, look, hey, if you can't do this, no problem. Here's a block, or here's a prop that will help you achieve a similar effect in the body, even though you're not able to actualize its final look or whatever. And really, it's not about like getting good at the physical positions per se. It's about, because I love one of my favorite teachers, man. One of these days I'll send you a couple of his videos just to try out, because they're really good. This guy Ian Finn, he's from Canada, and he's a surfer, into Tai Chi, and a yoga teacher, and he's blended all three of them together really well. And one of his favorite things to say and to communicate when teaching yoga is like, look, yoga is not a shape, it's a feeling. And so that kind of thought process helps you get out of like this achievement thing. It's like, how can I achieve the exact shape that looks so clean, like I see on Instagram or with these? You potentially can, and there's nothing wrong with, working towards refinement. But it's about how you feel afterwards. Like you said, you can go to the gym and you're like, oh man, I don't want to go to gym every day. And I don't want to go to yoga every day either, but I'm never bummed that I went. Never bummed, I always feel better. So
sometimes I want to say to myself, the way I feel when I leave jiu-jitsu, I want to like write it down in a book. And then the way I feel when I finish class, I want to write it down. So that any time that I'm like, oh, I don't feel like going today, I just want to open that book and look and be like, oh, the way I can feel like that in a matter of an hour if I just get up and go. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things, just like reading too sometimes. Like I try to keep a schedule of it. Sometimes I'm like, what the TV is much more engaging at times, or the video game or whatever. But it's like, I've never regretted sitting down and reading for a little bit ever when it's all said and done. Once you get into it, the brain calms down and you're involved. But sometimes it's just getting there and showing up and holding yourself accountable. Like earlier, show up to the studio every day, write that riff. Consistency. But yeah, I'm having fun with it. I got to do your class. I forget what happened. Oh, last week I was on my phone, like had no luck getting login, and then this week was my birthday weekend. But yeah, I'm excited to do your class. It's a cool thing. I like that it's an option that we can do it on the computer. I'd love to do it in person with you someday. That would be ideal. I know that since I'm kind of learning with this YouTube, I know that when I go to a class, I'm sure the teacher will probably like correct, certain things. But I've also, you said, I don't know how good this teacher is, and I don't have anything to go off of, but she does say in the videos, like, if this is where you need to be, cool. If you want to take it a step further, cool. So it seems like she is sympathetic to different amounts of flexibility or different levels of your yoga journey and things like that. For example, like I broke out of Liz Frank fracture in my foot, so like the mid, I had to have pins and plates and all this. And what happens when you're healing a broken foot is you walk kind of weird with your hips out of line. That'll screw up your whole back. And then, so for me, there's certain positions where the backs of my thighs are just so tight, like so tight. So all the ones where she's folded over the leg, I'm like barely leaning forward. My wife's like all down. And like, so yeah, and she says a lot, and I'm sure you know all this, but if it feels like good to you, then that's good. Like that's kind of the benefit. I'm not going to be perfect posture yet, especially if you're learning on YouTube, but I'm excited to get to a class and kind of see where I'm not there and where I can do better. But yeah, it's hard to learn on YouTube, but I'm still getting so much enjoyment out of it.
I'm so happy about that, dude. Well, there's a class tomorrow. If you're interested at 12 noon, so it'll be 2 o'clock for you. I'm starting to do these 12 o'clock on Tuesdays and 5 o'clock on Fridays, in addition to my Sunday morning yoga churches. And these will be like just 1 hour, a little bit more fitness based, but still yoga and stuff. And I put a little bit of the Tai Chi stuff in there too, because ever since I experienced that in the yoga class, I was like, oh, I got to have that. Like that feels really good. But I got to wrap it up a little bit, but I didn't even ask you. I love that I felt like I had a chance to ask you yet about guitar picks. So I was wanting to ask you if you could run us through like what you remember about your first couple of guitar picks, and if you can kind of recollect like the evolution of the different picks you've played through the years up until what you're playing now?
So yeah, I first started playing when I was 10, and I got a 3/4 size guitar. So like I was just so excited to learn. I went and picked up whatever pick I had. I remember specifically those. They look like pick guard colors, but this the Fender, whatever, the mediums, thins. I used to just grab whatever and play, and I honestly didn't even care about those details. Like I was told to get a full size guitar before I even wanted it. I was just like kind of doing whatever, picking up whatever pick. I would say if there's anything weird about my life with guitar picks, it's that every 3 years or so, I drastically change it. It's just like clockwork, to be honest with you. So I would say that's the most interesting aspect of my journey, is that I'll go from like a medium full size to right now I'm on Jazz 3s, which I've gone back to Jazz 3s twice.
Nice.
It's interesting. I don't know, but there's things about each one. Like, so this is my studio in front of me in the store. I'm doing, like, I recorded Infinite Mind and all those stuff. And speaking of the devil, I have Greg's Carbon pick.
Sick.
I
love it.
But what I notice is with picks is in the studio, there's such a beautiful underrated weapon. So I have like these wooden ones. These were custom made for me with the Born Osiris O on it, but really thick, made out of like, I'm not sure. But what I noticed is you get this really glassy tone in the studio. So I'll utilize picks in the studio for tonal capabilities. Also, thin picks can sound pretty with clean tones. If I have to go one, I go like Jazz 3 on stage for an hour and a half, or an hour. But in the studio, I find that I have a collection in front of me. They're all different because I like to utilize them for their tonal qualities. They do have them. Yeah, a couple of these Jazz 3s right here. These are different, made out of different things, but even though they're the same size and shape and relative thickness, this one's a little thicker. Yeah, I kind of use them as tools. I don't know if that's what you were asking me, but
yeah, no, it is. Yeah, and like that amber one looks like it was a Dunlop Ultex Jazz 3.
Yep.
And then the other one's like a Tortex custom print.
Yeah, so with the picks, I think when I went to the store, I was buying the black Jazz 3s, but when I wanted to like put my dog on there or whatever,
oh, I remember that.
They were
pick.
like, yeah, I still use them. I just change the color from time to time. But yeah, I think you have to get prints. I think this is the option you go with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I switch it up. Been with like, I think I did like the blue mediums full size before this. So again, very different. And each time I switch, I think I get better, but I don't even, it could just be like something new to feel. I don't know.
Sometimes it's just the freshness. I'm now at a point where I have so many picks and I have so many like high end builders. Like I just have this random this is from Iron. It's like, I think it's called Iron Age. So it's like this kind of like piece of wood that is married to a piece of like polymer, and it's all fused and cool. It's super sharp. I have, I have so many random ones that I get inspired by just having something different in my hand, that day. And it's wonderful. I mean, like we're in a beautiful, I have so many guitars and I'm like, I'm going to play that one looks cool today. I'm going to check you out. And then I'm going to pair you with this pick and see how that works out. And maybe I'll get a song out of it. Maybe I get a little riff out of it, I don't know.
I recognize this from your Instagram. I see you jam tons of times with that XFX in this corner right here. It seems, what I've always said is, I think always, but I said it to you like once, I always just love when I watch you play on Instagram. I can just see it in your face that you're just feeling it. And it just is so, it's just beautiful to see that, man. Like just you're jamming these riffs and freestyling, like you just see the passion on your face, man. It's beautiful.
Thanks, Lee, man. That's I can't say thank you enough. I really, I mean, I haven't like I went through a big phase of like not wanting to share anything because I work with all of you. I work with you. I work with almost every great player on the planet, and I'm like, that simultaneously makes me want to play and also burn all my guitars. It's that there's a paradox there. I'm like, why would I ever try to put anything out when all these people are doing such a great job? And then I come full circle and I'm like, oh, well, it's not a competition.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to play music because you love to play music. And reconnecting to that has then, like, you know what, I don't care. I don't have all the chops, and I will never have all the chops. And I'm not actually, interestingly enough, I'm being real about myself. I'm not trying to have them all. I'm not trying to be something I'm not.
Yeah.
So in that, it's given me freedom to feel comfortable in sharing, because I just am who I am, and like that's what you get. And if you don't like it, you don't have to tune into my shit. You know, it's fine.
Yeah.
I know I'm a little bit of hack here or there. You know, I'm just like trying to have fun like everybody else. You know,
I'm sure with friends in your life or anyone, you getting the same question I get all the time is, I'm 30 this, or I'm 42, or older in age, whatever. Not old, that's not old. But anyways, is it too late to start? That's the
right.
question you get from people at any age. And I'm like, no way. I'm 21 years into my journey, and I still have those days where I don't feel like I can do anything with a guitar. And but I think that's like the beauty of it. So what I told, like, my little brother just picked up a guitar the other day, and I'm like, if you're enjoying what you're doing in the moment, even if it's not even musical to somebody else, you win. As long as you're enjoying the 5 minutes a day that you play that one chord that you know, if it put a smile on your face, you got it. That's awesome. Because I can find days that I can't get that smile 21 years later because I'm almost being too hard on myself. So it's like,
Yep.
Oh man, like, just, it shouldn't be about that competition. And Born of Osiris, like, Tosin was in the band once live with me, and we've had some, it's been like, we haven't had a lot of guitar players that helped us write music. We've had some of the best guitar players like fill in with me. And what happens is they'll be like, how does Lee compare versus this guy? Like, who's better? Or they do it with guitar players all the time. Like, who's better, this guy or this guy? And that question always irks me, even if they think I'm better or whatever. It's not even a personal whether I won that or lost that. It's like, I hate that question because, for example, my records, like, I do a lot of faster stuff in Born, but on my records, I almost like them to be a little more relaxing. They're still heavier and edgier, my solo stuff, but my goal there is to just play sometimes more pretty than anything. And so then they'll take that and they'll compare it to some guy who's doing, and they'll be like, oh, that guy's better. I'm like, well, why though? Like, even if you take me out of the equation, because it sounds like I'm talking about me versus, but I'm just saying, like, this is just art, and it doesn't need to be compared in a win or lose fashion. You can appreciate what this guy's doing versus this guy. Like, I think you just snagged David Maximicic to Kiesel, and dude, that's one of my favorite guitar players right now.
Same.
And no, he's not going 90,000 miles an hour on his records. What I love about him is because it's so beautiful. And so whether it's slow playing and beautiful or fast and crazy, I respect that. Whether you know one chord and you smile when you play it because you're just learning, that's beautiful. It's all beautiful if you can just find happiness in it, you win.
Dude, I'm so glad that you highlighted him, because he is absolutely top shelf, one of my very favorite people to watch and listen to, and for all the reasons that we've been talking about the entire podcast, because of the dynamic and the intention and just who he is as a person comes through his music in such a beautiful way. Like, I love it when he gets heavy, because he understands what it means to do heavy and intense and technical stuff, but he always finds a way to keep it real dynamic and saucy, and like there's something that's happening in his setup. Like when my introduction to him was Below 3.0. Sarah Longfield posted about it and at the YouTube link when I was back at EMG Pickups. It feels like 100 years ago now, but I remember going, oh, Sarah thinks this is, and she said something about like the coolest thing ever, you know, and I was like, click. And I started listening, the whole intro and the whole like piano and like the orchestra type strings and stuff that he incorporated to, I was crying by like the track 3. I was like, where has this man been my whole fucking life, man? This is the coolest shit. Like, and it's hard to even like put like real words to it, because it just pushed my buttons in such a beautiful way that all I could do was message him and say, hey man, I don't know if you want to work with me on any level, but like I'll do whatever you want. Like you tell me how high to jump. I'll find a way to get the trampoline to get over the, you know, I'll do the thing. And he was just like, oh, let's just hang out. Like, it's cool. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you know, like, cause I was kind of fangirling a little bit. I was like, this guy, like who? And then what I also find that another little cool thing is that he is such a big Devin Townsend fan. And if you kind of look at him through that lens, you're like, oh, of course he is.
I
His
swear
production.
on my everything in this room right now that 10 seconds ago, the next comment out of my mouth was he's like an exotic Devin Townsend, because that's what I feel like. It's like Devin Townsend who came from a different country and has his own input, and like, and because I'm a huge Devin Townsend fan, like massive. Same. And it's so funny you got to that point. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay.
I agree.
I'll put a cherry on that guess. And David is born. They have the same birthday.
No.
Yeah, May 5th. May 5th.
That's crazy.
You know, 10 years or something or more apart or whatever, but maybe 15 or 20. I don't know. Freaky, yeah. And I actually had them a couple NAMs ago, because I when I stopped, I don't know, like 4 years ago or something, that I stopped partying at NAM. You know, I just like, no, I'm gonna take it chill, because I would stay out all night and, you know, do stupid shit and then be a ragged mess on the floor the next day, wearing sunglasses in there under those neon lights, trying not to feel it too hard. And but I stopped about, I don't know, it's like maybe 3 years ago. It was probably 4 years ago that I started teaching. I started teaching yoga at NAM. So like in the mornings, I'd stay at the Hilton every year, and so I just started inviting people down. And Devin and David showed up to the same class, and they both took like class with me. So there's a picture of Devin and David, like, you know, and a couple other folks that had come to the class. And it's like, man, if you had told me, like, you know, 5-10 years, like especially before I started teaching yoga, that someday you're going to be teaching yoga at NAM and you're going to like have two of your favorite people in your class, I'd tell you to fuck off a little bit, you know?
Yeah, man, for sure.
But
that's cool. I got to do that next NAM, because I've dialed it down. But I remember even the first year go to NAM, you don't think it's I mean, at least I didn't think it was a party, and then you realize that it is the biggest party ever. And then all the things that you thought NAM was gonna be, I'm gonna look at every guitar and every pedal. All of a sudden, you're just like fried the next day. You're like, I don't want to look at anything. I don't even want to hear anything. And so each time I dial it down, and thank God it also, because now I'm performing at NAM with Kiesel and stuff. So it kind of holds me accountable to not be hungover and not be crappy. Next time I got to go with you and do yoga and keep it chill, because that place will get you. And actually, it was a positive note, kind of side note, but I had my first ever sober performance at NAM at the Kiesel booth. And so I'm not saying I was like used to be wasted, but with anxiety and stuff, like it was a hard thing for me to ever like go on stage and not have a drink or something. So like, yeah, NAM will bring it out of you, whether it's a party or it's accountability. I've had both there, and it's an interesting place to be. But yeah, some yoga would do me much better at NAM than the alternatives.
Yeah, totally, man. I've had a lot of good results from that. I want to ask you two last things, and I gotta wrap it up for a few reasons. But one is that I asked a few friends, like, hey, I'm gonna have Lee on the pod today. Like, should I ask him anything? You know, and my buddy was like, he's putting together an album himself right now, and he's just like, maybe just ask him like about guest solos. Does he do guest solos, and what is the process like if somebody is looking to have you do a guest solo on their project? Do you have a going rate, and is that you would actually, you know, publicly state, and you know, how do you make that decision? Yeah,
so first, I thought you were asking if I have people on my records, and I'll answer that one first, even though it's not the question you're asking. And I don't right now. I'm going to end up doing a solo record where each song has a guest, because we've got you and I both know we have cool friends that we're stoked, like the Davids, that we get to meet through this industry, and I would love to have him on a song.
Correct.
At the moment, I don't do them on my regular records because I don't want to have to like learn anybody else's stuff or whatever. But as far as guest solos and other people's music, I love doing them. And so, I mean, naturally, yeah, I have a cost. It's usually around like the $400 mark or something like that. I've been doing cheaper during quarantine because I had to cancel all these tours. So did everyone else. So it's all good. But yeah, it's usually like around the $400, $500 mark. But okay, so yes, there's money to be made. But I want to say what I think is the most beautiful thing about it is what cooler way to connect with a musician that you enjoy than to share music with them. So it's not just a cash thing for me. Like I think so Guthrie Govan is like probably like my all-time hero on guitar.
Yeah.
And I would first of all I would love to have a conversation with him. But if you told me I could have that or I could have him on one of my songs, I'm gonna share that connection with him. I want him on one of my songs desperately badly. If you know how to hook me up, if you know how I can do that. But yeah, no, I think it's the most beautiful way to connect. So yes, I do them. It's not just for money. It's really because I think it's the coolest way to connect with other people. I don't think people in the rock and metal world collab enough. When you listen to the radio, every song is two artists coming together. You know what I mean? And so I think this world could use a bit more collaboration, and I'm all about doing it.
That's cool. Well, that's a great answer, and thank you for letting us know. Lastly, I'd like to ask, just do you have an artist or an album or one or two things that you've been listening to recently, or something we could shout out that we should check out?
Yeah, my album of the year last year was this band called Sleep Token. It's like Phantom of the Opera meets like Deftones meets metal. It's really cool. They wear like masks, but they're like really artistic, and it sounds like an opera singer, and it's kind of heavy and dark and goth. But right now I'm listening to like Plini just came out with a couple of things. Another artist similar in the David Maximic world that I feel like guitar players writing songs that, yeah, there's flashy stuff for sure, but like it's not based on that. Like when you used to listen to some older guitar records from certain artists, and this isn't even negative because those records that were flashy shaped like my childhood of playing guitar. So I'm not even being negative, but just I'm really into that right now. Like the songwriting aspect of it. That's why David Maxim like gets me going, because the songs that he's creating. It's like Devin Townsend, the songs, the production, the effects, everything. But yeah, so Plini put out a couple things. I should say out loud that the one thing I saw him say about them is that he kind of considers them interludes and not songs, because I think he like saw a picture or took a picture. I hope I'm not butchering this, but like turned it into music and melodies and like transcribed some photo into melody somehow. So I recommend Plini to anybody, but he just released something called Birds and Surfers, 2 songs. I recommend any of his music, but I would say that's the recent thing that I was jamming the other night was Birds/Surfers by Plini. Cool.
I haven't checked. I haven't heard. I didn't know that he released anything, and he's one of my favorites too. I actually found out. I found out about Plini through David, or vice versa. I'm not sure which one happened first, but it was Plini through David, because I found David through
Sarah.
Through Sarah, yeah. What a masterful guitar player, and you're right. Like he holds a real particular space for somebody that knows how to. Obviously, I mean, dynamic is like you can't use that word enough for either one of those, but for David or Plini, but composer. He's a composer writing music and taking inspiration from a painting and transmuting that. And I love those stories. I love when David was on the pod at NAMM, he talked about like some of the album that he's finishing up now, Bilo 4.0. There's a couple songs or a portion of it that's inspired by a friend of his that passed away, and like there's a smell that he associates with certain things, and he's like, and so the smell is like the driving force around trying to like kind of like create the music so that maybe the smell will not haunt him or go away. I'm like, man, what? Okay, that's really. I'm interested in how life affects the art, and vice versa, because it feeds in and on itself. And
I gotta listen to that one. I know we gotta wrap it up, but one thing about both those guys have me doing is turning the gain down on my lead channels, because I think when David plays a lot of stuff, I can hear his fingers like rolling off the string. Like you hear every detail because it's not covered up by all this gain. So that's been something lately that I'm like, I'm almost treating gain like reverb, where now I'm gonna dial it into it. Not like it's there, but like I'm only gonna bring it into where it needs to be and nothing more. So that's been something that I've been interested in, is gaining down, like less gain, because you get more detail, and that's becoming more and more important to me over time as I move towards less and more dynamic and, you know, beauty and stuff like that. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, before we close, do you happen to have that new 8-string there close to you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Can you show it off for a second?
I feel bad because the lighting in my studio is so bad. I keep it that way.
Yeah, that thing's not. Yeah, it won't show up quite the way it's supposed to on that. That's okay.
We sell this one, and this one you can buy as is, and you will be able to see it because it's white.
Oh yeah.
But we sell this guitar as is with the roasted bird's eye, everything. This one, oh, this is the bird's eye. The roasted maple, white, just beautiful. Everything.
So cool.
And you can get this one as it is. And it's crazy. Like, we did the math on, like, if you add up all the features of this one for how much you would pay for it, like individually or with a different company. And it's like, Kiesel's just getting away with, like, because there's no middlemen involved in the company, and because they're just direct to the consumer, you get so much more American made guitar for your money with the company. And that's a fact, whether you're with the company or not. You know what I mean? It's not just because I'm part of the company, but it's just a fact.
That's
but yeah, doing more 8-string. I don't have like the biggest hands ever, and so 8-strings kind of turned me off for a long time because they didn't feel comfortable, and that's all I care about anymore with guitar. Like, it's just, does it feel good? Is it comfy? Does it make me feel happy? And the 8-strings here, like, they don't feel like trees in your hands, and so they're more approachable, more playable.
Agreed. I think that are yours fan fret or no?
No, I don't.
No, that's because you have a trim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do it on bass, and the other guy in Bourne just got one on 8-string. I would consider it for 8-string, but at the moment, no, I haven't gone that way.
That's all right. Well, I just appreciate the fan fret on 8-string. It made kind of the same thing. I felt comfortable when I felt like there was I don't know. It made it less daunting, even though I'm still not really an 8-string. 7-string is 6 and 7. I just like to stay in those realms for the most part.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate I have an 8-string here, and you know, every once in a while I try to. But yeah, I feel like you have to be dedicated to the thing, man. Otherwise, if you just toy with it, then you don't ever fully make friends with it.
I agree. That's a beautiful point to make.
You know?
So I think when you see Tosin play an 8, it's just like, oh, you dedicated, you committed, and that's like your dance partner right there. So it's a beautiful way to use it.
Yeah. Well, Lee, man, I got to wrap it up, but thank you so much, man, from the bottom of my heart. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I can't wait till there's another opportunity for us to hang in person. And
Absolutely.
I'll keep inviting you to the yoga classes, and you show up whenever you can. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, just let me know.
Appreciate it. You have behind the scenes in many ways already, and I appreciate you. And thanks for having me on your podcast. I remember I saw you at NAMM and told you I was into it, so it's cool to be, you know, on it now. And yeah, thank you. Beautiful conversation. I love having these, and they also make you walk away feeling better after a good conversation, just like a good class.
That's right. That's right. All right, man. Well, have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch real soon, okay?
You too, brother. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Peace.